It's easy, to see the world in terms of black and white and goodies and baddies, but it's not quite like that. And we've got now on our show our resident criminologist Dr Paul Wilson to talk about the recent Fitzgerald Inquiry. Please welcome Paul Wilson. Welcome again to the show.
Thank you, Bert.
And it's so true, I think, what I've just said, and that is, you can't put things like that in terms of black and white, can you?
I think some of the characters who've been mentioned in the Fitzgerald Inquiry aren't quite as bad as they've been painted out to be. I mean, I'm not excusing them for anything they might have done, and I'm not saying they've done anything because that's up to the courts and the special prosecutor, but I knew most of the principal characters, people like Terry Lewis, for example, and Lewis had a lot of very redeeming features, strangely enough, to some people. He began, for example, the Queensland Juvenile Aid Squad, which was the first squad in Australia which would counsel rather than charge young juveniles who were charged with an offence. He was a damn good detective. He won a Churchill Fellowship. There are a lot of things about him, I think, which were very positive, even though what's coming through in the media all the time are very negative things. I'm not defending the man. I'm simply saying that, as you said in your introduction, people aren't good or bad. There's a bit of both in all of us.
What sort of a bloke is he?
Very pleasant man. Everyone liked him, Bert. I mean, he was a man you could relate to very easily and talk to very easily. I think he was a man who people of all political persuasions seem to like on a very personal level. Now, that mightn't excuse anything he might or might not have done, but he was a very personable man. Other people in the Fitzgerald Inquiry, I think, including Tony Fitzgerald himself, were also very, very pleasant men, even though they might have come across in a certain way in the media.
Who else do you know?
Well, Herbert, of course, who was the bagman. I knew him.
He was a Victorian policeman, I've discovered, originally.
Well, he was actually from England, but he was in Victoria, that's right. Yeah. But again, he was a bit like Arthur out of Minder, with a harder edge to him. A good detective, like Lewis, but clearly in the case of Herbert, because he has confessed to being a bagman, a man who went right off the rails.
I made the comment on the program just after the Fitzgerald Inquiry report was handed to the Queensland government that the media attention, and it was quite justified, because it just seemed to me that the Fitzgerald Inquiry was based primarily on the police and not the politicians.
Well, I think that's right. What's come out of the Fitzgerald Inquiry is an indictment on the Queensland Police Force, but I think behind the police force there were politicians. Even without the Lewises and the Herberts and other people, I think what went on in Queensland would have happened because the politicians worked under a system of patronage. People who got jobs were people who agreed with the government of the day. Now, you can't run a police force that way. If you do, any police force will go off the rails. And I think if the Fitzgerald Inquiry is going to have any worth at all, it's going to be the politicians who are going to have to fix it up. If they don't want to, it won't work.
What did you think of the inquiry in the report?
Well, I think it really said what all of us knew 20 years ago, and you didn't have to spend $24 million to come and reach the obvious. But I think, to be fair to Fitzgerald, what he has done is to point to the causes of corruption in Queensland. Political patronage, for example, the fact that the police force was run largely by yes boys, there was no proper management. He's pointed to all those things. What he avoided, Bert, was to pick out a few rotten apples and mention names. Now, I know a lot of people in the media wanted him to mention names, but by mentioning names, all you do is to pick out the rotten apples, you don't get to the packing case. And I think he pointed to the real causes of corruption in Queensland. But whether anything will be done about it remains to be seen.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, what can we expect now? Do you believe that we're all assuming there are certain people, and I guess away from television cameras and radio microphones, we name names, so there wouldn't be a lot of surprises for a lot of us. Will there be any shocks that we haven't yet uncovered?
I think there will be some. When the special prosecutor starts making charges, you'll see some names going before the courts, which clearly we can't mention here, but which will be names that haven't been mentioned before.
How clean are other states in comparison to Queensland?
There's a certain degree of hypocrisy about talking about corruption on the Queensland Police Force. There are, unfortunately, other states which worry me very much indeed in terms of possible corruption.
Which states?
I don't want to name them for a whole variety of reasons. But,
on the eastern coast?
Yes, yes. But I do think there are some problems in other state police forces. I think Victoria's got a fairly clean image, and probably rightly so. They had the Beach Inquiry many years ago. But I think that even though there are very good commissioners like John Avery trying to clean up the New South Wales police force, there are still problems there.
We can draw our own conclusions, can't we?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Which is the cleanest state? Which is the one that gives you least worries?
I suppose at this point of time, because Victoria had the Beach Inquiry, probably Victoria. But again, I don't think we can all in Australia point to Queensland and say it doesn't go on anywhere else in this country. It does. I think the lesson from Queensland is that once politicians begin to get involved in policing and telling police commissioners and other people what to do, then we're all in trouble.
You've got problems.
Yep.
Paul, lovely seeing you again.
Nice seeing you too, Bert.
Dr Paul Wilson, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.